Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for a live stream with me, Andy the Gabby Cabby. Sorry, been away for a couple of weeks, been no lives for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to line up a good one for you on my return. We'll be talking to Graeme again from the English Constitution Party, and it's bound to be a real doozy. We'll get completely up to date with everything that's happening with the court situation, Runcorn Helsby, and everything else. Funny thing to tell you, there is absolutely nowhere on the mainstream media that's talking about this. I'm talking about this. Sean Atwood's talking about this, and a couple of other people are here and there, primarily YouTubers, but the mainstream tend to want it buried. I found this, the Liverpool Echo. That is the only place so far I've seen any mention of this situation whatsoever. Could be others. I've read the article, and it's slightly misrepresentational of the facts. It's not quite all the way there, but it's got the majority of the information in. But it's the only place I've seen. Before I bring Graeme on, can I ask everybody to please, if you haven't done so already, give it a thumbs up, because important stuff like this, we need to get it shared around, and obviously subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with everything. And without further ado, here's the man himself. Hi, Graeme. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm very well. I'm slightly hot, but other than that, I'm very well.
Yeah, it's certainly a scorcher, isn't it? I think I was on the road yesterday, 32 degrees, it said on my car. It's the hottest I've seen it for a while.
No, it's good. There's nothing to worry about. I quite like the heat.
Yeah,
it gets the wet sweat glands working.
They make us panic in the news, don't they? But it's all good. All good.
Yeah, no, it is.
Well, speaking of the news, last time we had you on the channel, you had this directions hearing coming up in June with regard to what happened in Runcorn and Helsby. And, you know, that's as far as we got. So that's probably as good a place to start. What happened there? How did it go?
It went very well. One thing I will say to everybody that's listening to this, I'm immensely grateful for the supporters that turned up in the public gallery, because what people need to be aware of, this was heard in the High Court, King's Bench Division, not in chambers, in an actual court. So again, lots of supporters in the gallery, and that meant that our hearing judge could see, the Lady Justice could see the tremendous support from the public for this case. In other words, what we refer to as public interest. And that was crucial. So, and again, without channels like yours, Andy, and especially the in-depth information that you're putting out to people, people are now getting and understanding what's going on. I'm getting lots of emails from people. It's crucially important that they understand that they can send me an email, and there's a particular way of doing it if they went to our website, where if they didn't receive our leaflet, and it wasn't as large as this is an A3 version. That's an A3 version for the court, just so the judges absolutely understand what it says. That it wasn't delivered, that's obviously an election interference offence. But people can make a statement to that effect that they never received it. Now, that is an offence. At the second, if they voted for us, send us a statement to say you voted for us, and all of that can be used. It doesn't mean you're going to get any sort of costs involved, you're just doing it. So getting back to the actual hearing, which was a directions hearing on June the 13th, the 4 respondents were represented. So Sarah Pochin, MP, was represented by her. She is a respondent. The Royal Mail Group Limited, who are being very aggressive, were represented. And they're actually fighting another argument with me as well, because they don't want the CEO's name, Emma Gilthorpe, included in the petition. There is going to be legal argument on that, which I'll present on the 25th of July. The other 2 is the returning officer, who is also being very aggressive, as you might expect. And the other person is the Chief Constable of Cheshire, who is also being very aggressive. What I mean by very aggressive is they droned on for about 30 minutes non-stop about costs. And the Lady Justice returned her comment, which is that Mr. Moore, the petitioner, has paid £5,000 cash deposit into this court. And I want to make sure, and bearing in mind how much they droned on and on about course, what they was trying to do was frighten me. And she said, Mr. Moore, are you aware that it's just a deposit? I said, I am. Are you aware of the risk? I said, I am, Mum. I said, but I take an oath, and that oath is to England and the Constitution. I am fully aware of the risk to me personally, financially, but justice is justice. And she then said to the 4 respondents, costs are at my discretion, right? Now, I've read all the previous cases on this, right? Massively read all these cases. And what's really important is in many of them cases, the judge has said, as per costs, the respondents and the petitioner are responsible for their own costs. That's it. So she could say, no, sorry, in the interest of justice, you deal with your costs and Mr. Moore will deal with his. That's it, right? So the point being, she also asked, as part of the droning on, she said, can I ask each respondent to allocate to Mr. Moore, to advise Mr. Moore what the cost will be up until the next hearing, which isn't the full trial. And one of them come back with a figure of £71,628. And let me just make sure I'll get this right. Their disbursements, which is sending letters, right, so far is £9,510 for sending 2 letters, right? And the time costs so far are £33,559.40, totaling 43 grand up until the day of the last hearing. And what they're saying is the next cost will be in excess of 24,000. Now that's going to be coming from each respondent. So you're talking about roughly £400,000 of costs. And then on top of that, you've got the trial, which they are looking at somewhere in between, well, roughly 500 grand. So just shy of £1 million is what they're trying to do. And what they're actually trying to do is terrorize me, right? Well, it's not working.
Trying to price you out of it.
Exactly. And that is not, just to make sure, people must be aware of this, our justice system, going all the way back, although I don't want to make reference to the Magna Carta, but we shouldn't be paying for justice and right. It is a right of ours to claim our rights, and that's exactly what we're doing. So as part of that, unless you've got any questions on that first, and any other questions, and I'll I don't know if you're aware of this, but we sent a specific type of registered mail. It cost us 50 quid to the Secretary of State in United States of America, Rubio, I think his name is. And we had a response to that letter, which we sent them the sealed petition and some evidence. And the response to that was 2 Americans from the embassy turned up and said and told the usher, we have an interest in this case.
Okay.
So in other words, there are external people looking at what's going on, and especially to do with corruption of elections.
You got a question here. Who's paying for that? Obviously 70 grand respondents cost 500 grand. But are you liable for it all now? If you lose, are they liable for it? Who's paying for it?
So the judge made a particular point in saying to them, costs are at my discretion, right? So from previous cases that I've read, and I'm not suggesting it can happen in this case, but the judge couldn't award park costs, etc. She did say to me, how are you intending to fund this? And I said, if I lose, we will fund it by crowdfunding. And she said, that's fine, but you've got ways in which you can do it. And I said, I don't know how much the crowdfund's going to come to. All I know is that the media are not advertising this. There is a media, I told the judge this, there is a media blackout on this case, completely and utterly, right? And one of the reasons is because they don't want us to raise the funds to be able to fight back, right? So the judge then said to me, the Lady Justice said to me, there isn't a media blackout from this court. This petition was advertised and it's fully listed. I said, Mum, I understand that. It's not the court, it's the media. And she said, okay, I understand what you're saying. So she understood what they was doing in the background. I personally believe she understood where I was coming from with a number of bits and pieces. She then asked the others, first of all, she sort of told them off, which I was quite pleased about. There's something in law, it's called piggybacking. And it's where you've got a number of respondents and they push through a lead and they all fire their stuff through this one respondent, and it can become very confusing, right? And then the Lady Justice said to them, there will be no piggybacking in this case. You each write your own defense to this petition, right? And basically they all had to agree to do that. And then this was the bit that they all started putting dates forward, and she basically stopped them. She said, let me just say this. This petition and this hearing has been created and it is in the cause of the petitioner. That's Mr. Moore. He is the petitioner. He's the most important person in this court, not you. We can swap any one of you out at any time because basically barristers are two a penny. There is only one petitioner, and that's Mr. Moore. And therefore, we will ask him to look in his diary and tell us what the dates are that he can do, right? So I went through my diary and told her the dates. There's a couple of issues where I'm abroad. I was going to a seminar in Northern Ireland. For various reasons, we've had to cancel it, mainly because of the violence in Northern Ireland and some issues out there at the moment. And what I don't want to do is appear that we're anything to do with violence. We are not, right? But the main issue here is that she pushed back on that as well. She also told us that she would be the hearing judge. And I want to make sure I emphasize this to people. There's 2 High Court judges, so she had to find another judge to sit with her. She set the date of the hearing to be the 2nd of October onwards, but we don't know exactly the date yet. But she said the 2nd of October. I've put it in my diary. I've now got to find another High Court judge that can sit with me, because we come from here to Runcorn and Helsby and we listen to the case in the area. That's the whole point of this. It's a bit like the old Desire courts. Yeah. And one of the other thing that she told them off about, which I thought was fantastic as well, they had put in a court order that what they suggested was to use the civil court in Runcorn. And the judge said, I can tell you now, I practiced at the civil court in Runcorn, and I can tell you now, it no longer exists. And if you knew the area, you would know that. It's been shut for years. And I said, that's correct, right? So she looked at me, and then they sort of thought, oh, we've made a boo-boo. They've just taken something off of a database on the internet and stuck it into this High Court without even checking that the court's still there. And one of the things that I did say, when they talked about doing skeleton arguments, and the Lady Justice said to me, I need you to put forward to me in a skeleton argument all of the authorities that you rely on. I said, I understand that, Your Ladyship, and that will be forthcoming. I said, but may I just add that I do not do AI. That my laws and what I'll be presenting is from some of the ancient laws and from my reading of law. And those authorities will be used from that book, and AI hasn't got access to them, just as a warning to the other side. And then she said, she basically looked at them, and as she did, there was one of the barristers on the laptop. And because I said AI, the gallery told me after he shut his laptop down because he was on an AI looking for answers to what I was saying.
Right.
So it was quite amusing in some places.
Wonderful. I mean, I spoke to a programmer yesterday about AI, about how it's programmed with the knowledge it's programmed with. And we're like, when you type in, tell me blah, blah, blah about the English Constitution, it tries to substitute the word English for British, and it won't have anything. And you end up having an argument with the bloody thing over it. It's not entirely infallible, is it? Just to do with costs, this was online. It's a GoFundMe, and I'll leave a link in the description once we end this live and it's been processed, where I think you're just trying to start the process of getting a few quid together to help with costs if and when they're incurred. And I think there's a couple of grand in there so far, and it's ticking over, but I'll certainly share that. Thank you. October. What's happening in October? Where, when, who, and what's the next stage?
So the next stage is not October. What they argued was for an adjournment, because I'd put them under pressure for the June the 13th, and now they're all, I don't want to say, they're extremely worried, right? And because of that, they wasn't ready with their arguments, right? Even though I was. So the judges adjourned it until the 25th of July, where I have to return to the High Court, and she's now allocated a whole day for legal argument on the from the four respondents to me, and from me back to the four respondents. I will be heavily relying on our literal English maxim, not British, English, on freedom of elections and purity of elections. It's a legal term that's been used in a particular court case. And there are a number of elements that I need to put forward, concentrate on, and create that skeleton argument. And then she will ask me to give an oral statement to what our case is. So just to make sure everyone's aware, this is a crucially important date, which is the 25th of July, Royal Courts of Justice, King's Bench Division. 2 justices will be there listening to this, and it is in effect what's known in if you want to call it old law, it was never abolished, it was merged, and it's called the Court of Common Pleas. So anyone out there listening will understand that that's part of that ancient law system, and these 2 judges, because it's an election petition, are actually representing the Court of Common Pleas, right? So you're going back into the most real situation with common law, right? Not administrative law and CPR rules and petition rules, but to the purity of the common law. So that date is the 25th of July, Royal Courts of Justice, and I need as many people as possible to be there, including standing outside with this, which is the leaflet that obviously it's been enhanced, but the leaflet that was not delivered by the Royal Mail, which is an election offence. So the direct answer to what you're saying, have you? I don't know. There's a message come up there, but I'm not sure what that was.
Ignore that.
Okay. So what the judge ordered on the 13th of July, we've agreed to that order, It sets out the dates which they have to send me their arguments, and two of them have already done it. She also insisted that they all give me the arguments 7 days before we have to put in our skeleton arguments. So I've got a lot. If people must understand this, if you're up against one respondent, it's a lot of work. I'm up against 4 separate respondents, and I'm the one doing the work, right? So when we're asking for costs, remember, I'm not asking for anything, right? I'm doing this free of charge with all of the researchers behind me and me. I'm just a mouthpiece for the English Constitution Society and the English Constitution Party and the people that helped us in that campaign and voted for us in Runcorn and Helsby. What's crucially important is they are all high-powered lawyers that are in effect being funded, if not by groups of bankers in terms of reform, if not being funded by that, they're being funded by the taxpayer, the returning officers, all of that, everything that's going on, the police, is all being funded by the taxpayer. And people need to realise these people are going against your constitutional and common law rights of free elections. And they're trying to suppress that by pressuring me with costs. So all we need to do is show the judge that we are very serious, and we need to stop corruption in our election system. So the 25th of July is the next hearing. The judges could decide to strike the whole thing out and it doesn't go to a hearing. That's what they're hoping for. They're using lots of CPR rules and petition rules. There is an argument against that, which I won't go into tonight because I don't want to pre-arm them. But I can tell you most of what I rely on isn't in any AI database, but is most definitely English law and precedent set in the past by our ancestors.
Well, I think we had a discussion before in one of our previous live streams where you get to a point, I think it was the early 1970s actually, where a lot of this stuff wasn't taught anymore in schools. So a lot of these modern day lawyers, it's CPR this, CPR that, and they haven't got a freaking clue about anything prior to that point, have they? So,
and again, just to make sure everyone gets this point, there was a very famous case. It was called Leach. I can't remember the exact year, but I think it was 1993, and it was basically Leach against the Home Secretary in reference to the prison law, and the prison's law, or the Prison Act, then gave authority of the prison rules, right? What was crucially important about that Leach case is the governor of the prison didn't allow him to communicate with his solicitor to take the governor to court. So he got it into court. He presented his own case. And in that case, the High Court agreed that it was an offence and that the prison rules could not supersede your common law right to free access to justice. And they found in his favour. Now, that's quite a famous case because it actually says statutory instruments. Again, there's hierarchy of laws in this country. The Sunderland case, or otherwise known as the Metric Martyr case, is quite famous for that, where Sir John Laws set out the hierarchy of the laws. And basically, you can't willy-nilly take the rights of the people away, and especially do it with a set of rules. Just to emphasise this to everyone, the English have rights, the British have rules. Our rights are well in front of their rules. Their rules don't even touch our rights. And that's crucially important for people to understand.
I think this sums it up, this comment here. Gooner mum, the British system hides a superior English law Constitution our rights, because otherwise it would ban them from all their corruption and awful things they're forcing on us.
Exactly, and that is a completely summed up. That's exactly what they're doing. So they hide, and especially, and it's one particular element of this that people need to understand. Freedom of elections is what's known in law as an absolute right. In other words, it is a maxim of English law. And once you understand that, then you understand that even primary acts of Parliament can't go against it. That's when the judiciary have to step in and say, no. A maxim of English law. We are a common law jurisdiction. And because England and Wales are a common law jurisdiction, you can't have any form of administrative law removing your maxim rights.
Absolutely. A lot of people, where we've discussed this before, Graham's a sore loser, get over it, you know, that kind of comment. I mean, it's bullshit. There's more at stake than that. What do you hope to achieve? What do you want to see come out of all this?
That corruption in elections is finally the High Court stand up to the job that it is entrusted to do and stops any form of corruption. Like I say, there must be purity in elections. So there's a couple of things I'll say. In our ancient laws, if you went for election, for example, there's something else called quo warranto writs. Most people have never heard of that today. No. And one of the reasons why is because it was abolished by the Bill of Rights, in effect. And it is where the Crown manipulated who they wanted to put in Parliament. So the Crown had control of Parliament, right? So people need to understand that what they've done is they've added two separate elements to a return. They've added who is returned as an MP, but they've also added via the same return who gets their deposit back. If you steal someone's votes, you're stealing their £500, right? So this is crucial that everyone must understand this. I think I have articulated it on a number of shows now. In 2011, there was a referendum, and that referendum was about alternative vote. And 67%, I believe it was, of the turnout of the electorate on a UK-wide referendum said no. We do not want alternative vote. We want to carry on with first past the post. Mm. Why is that crucial to this case? Because the public have stood up and said, we don't want an alternative vote. We want to keep this system. And in doing so, certain areas, particularly in the north and certainly in city, have implemented illegally their own form of alternative vote, where they take the votes of the people that voted for, I don't know, let's say an independent. We are the greatest independent group. There is a manifesto is the English Constitution, right? We haven't got a policy document. This is what I said to the judge. We're about the English Constitution. She seemed fascinated by that, by the way. Maybe she was thinking about voting for us. But so on the other side of the fence, what you've got when you look at that is that when you steal someone's vote, Ashby versus White, it tells you that that is completely unlawful. It doesn't matter whether what happened affects the return of the vote. What matters is that that person voted and their vote is allocated to the person. Otherwise, the term is disenfranchise them from their freedom of election right? So what I'm saying to you is, and especially because of the referendum for alternative vote, they have decided, certain groups of people have decided that they will ad hoc use their own form of alternative vote system, which is highly illegal. So when they take your vote, they're stealing the vote of the person who voted that should go to the candidate they voted for. Whether or not he wins or she wins is not relevant to that. It's about the purity of the election. And what that does, it shows the public that the public opinion is going in different ways. And what they need to do as a uni party is to stop people seeing that they're not very well liked. So what they do is they demoralize independent candidates or small parties like mine by saying you haven't got any support, when in fact we have, but our support is being misallocated to them. And that's highly illegal. So people need to understand, because of the way they changed the election law to say you've got to pay a £500 deposit, and this is the key, you must get 5% of the turnout to get your deposit back. That is just as paramount in an election now as the return of an MP. They're not allowed to interfere with that. If they are, they're stealing money off you and stealing votes, which is illegal.
It's like double the trouble, isn't it? Yeah, crooked as anything. Just at this stage, I just want to thank everyone for watching. We're not far off 800 people watching live. Appreciate that very much. And as I said at the beginning, if you can make sure you give this a thumbs up, because it is important. Just to read out a couple of super chats that have come in. Edward Golden 2, thank you for the £10 super chat. Keskabayak 1666, boy, that is a topic for another time, definitely. Another one here, Nosy Poke, is it true CEO of Royal Mail has resigned Friday? Gone. If so, how does that affect the case? And thank you for the £10 super chat.
Well, that's news to me, and if that is the case, I hope someone will research that and send me a link to it if that is the case. But as far as I am aware, no. But certainly they did not like me using the name Emma Gilthorpe. And by the way, that doesn't change the petition. If she has in fact resigned, she was in charge, and as the agency, because she's acted as an agent of the Crown, and she is in effect the employees act as agency. She is still responsible for them personally, and that's one of the things that we're arguing on the 25th of July. So the Royal Mail Group Limited would still be in there, but her name in particular is still in there because she was the person in charge when all this happened. So if she has resigned, I would find that, I don't know if anyone wants to research that while they're out there now, but that's very interesting. I don't think she has. I think I would have heard about it.
Yeah, so if someone could check that and drop it in the comments while we're live, we would appreciate it very much. Yeah, the guy that sent me a £10 super chat just said, this bloke's a bullshitter. Bye, thanks, Cabby. Well, cost you a tenner to say that. Goodbye, and thank you very much. Anyway,
but by the way, that person is one of the old trolls on YouTube where I have the other accounts. I know exactly who that is, and he's a complete and utter lemon.
Right. Well, he's £10 worse off than he was before he came here, so suits me.
Good. We'll both have a beer on that next time we meet, or if we meet.
We will do sooner or later. This is a good one. We're not actually fighting. I mean, this is a very important point, actually. We're not actually fighting the results of this election because we think we won. We're fighting it for free and fair elections. You know,
absolutely.
If this comes out how it could and how it should do, we fully expect that Sarah Postal absolutely smashed it. Not 6 votes or 4 votes or whatever it is. Absolute landslide. Because the Uni Party, the Conservatives and Labour are crap. And, you know, people know that. And the support you got in the area, Graeme, 50 votes, come off it.
Well, again, what people are not realising is and again, this is all part of the petition. Oh, that's one thing that the Lady Justice the opposition are trying to get removed the Royal Society of Statisticians, who has wrote an expert statement saying that it's 1 million to 1, and the respondents are all trying to get that statement struck out.
Right.
So it's fairly obvious. So it's fairly obvious. But I mean, you can use the Royal Society of Statistics to, for example, give a young lady that's not guilty of heinous offences 9 full life terms. But when it comes to an election, you can't use the Royal Society of Statistics expert. But it just beggars belief what they're trying to do. So there's going to be an argument for that as well.
Absolutely. John Coates, thank you for the £10 super chat. I hope he wins in July. So good wishes from John Coates there, as do I and many other people. That's wonderful. Just on the subject of voting, what you say about the alternate vote referendum, I remember that. And one of the things is that's not what we were asking for, was it? It was supposed to be a vote on proportional representation, not an alternate vote.
And they changed it. And they changed it. And they changed it to alternative vote because it's easier to cheat. Right. So the bit that shocks me about that referendum is that the whole country more or less said no to it, and now the cheats, which is mainly I mean, I've never really heard or seen of a conservative run council cheating. Right. I've never. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying I've never seen it. Not to the extent that I've seen it in Labour-controlled councils, which is. Can I just say thank you to the people who are sending me messages. The Royal Mail boss quits after 1 year as a new owner takes over. So she has quit. She has quit.
I've just had this from Nosy Pope. Thank you again for the £5 super chat. It's in the Guardian news rag about Royal Mail CEO resigns. Not a paper I'd ever put in front of my eyes usually, but it's in there.
Well, it's in the Telegraph and it's in BM magazine, whatever that is. So right. It looks like it is. Which I'll have to read after. It's going to be quite fascinating reading that.
So what effect, if any, would that have on the case? Would she still have to be involved because she was the CEO at the time all this kicked off?
I will argue 100%, yeah. But it now makes more sense why they're trying to take her name off of it. But the whole point of this is she was in charge when this happened. Right. So therefore, she's personally responsible. Just to make sure everyone's clear on this, there's a lot of people out there, that reference legal fictions. Legal fictions are real, but some of the interpretations of legal fictions I see are wrong. Right. So just want to make sure everyone gets that. Right. I'm not saying legal fictions don't exist. In fact, I've got a book here, which is Helsby's Laws of England, that tells you that the monarch is a legal fiction. So if you keep that in mind, what does it mean? It means that the reason why the monarch can do no wrong is because it is a legal fiction, but the crown servants can, and therefore you sue the crown servants. It's because it's a legal fiction, right? There's a whole different story about the oaths and why they're taken so quickly after the death of a monarch. I mean, literally before the body dies, before the body goes cold, the accession oath. And the reason they do that is to keep the accession of the monarch or the legal fiction alive in terms of legality. The major point that people need to understand is that the Royal Mail Group Limited is a legal fiction. So it itself technically can't do me a harm because it's a legal fiction, but its officers can. Well, the chief executive officer was at this time Emma Gilthorpe, and the people that work for the Royal Mail, right, are in effect as an extension her agents, and therefore harmed me, and she's personally responsible for that. So yes, it directly goes back to her. I just want to make sure I'm clear on something else. Just some of this is going to be, I'm not giving all my secrets away here, but in 2019 there was a High Court injunction on Royal Mail employees. It was asked for by the Royal Mail Group Limited, and the subject of that injunction was interfering with an election, right? So it's not as if the employees of the Royal Mail Group Limited haven't got any antecedents for this. They have, and that's one of the things that's being brought up. So again, you've got the High Court stepping in, issued the injunction against the Communication Workers Union, who are big funders of the Labour Party, who were creating a strike during an election, right? Well, that interferes with the electoral process, and therefore the court issued an injunction to say you can't strike during an election because it interferes with the community's right and the country's right to freedom of elections. So it's not as if this group of people haven't got antecedents to this. They have.
Scott 2, thank you for the £5 super chat. Up the English. The nation has been in decline ever since English primacy has been suppressed. Britain, like the EU, is a made-up construct. That's what a lot of people tend to get very defensive over. I'm British. Is what you hear a lot, and they see us as that whole, you know, Great Britain united. And a lot of the politicians do this as well. I won't name any of them in this live stream, but at the end of the day, you know, Britain is an island floating somewhere around the Atlantic and the North Sea. We're made up of countries: England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. We're all individual countries. Britain, United Kingdom, is nothing more than a political union, and I don't think many people kind of get that still, do they, Graeme?
No, they don't. And I did actually want to. I've actually put this up somewhere. I think I've got it somewhere. In fact, if I can find it, I'll read it to you. It's quite funny. But basically, the basis of it is. And again, if I can find the actual passage, I will tell you what it says. But I've got it somewhere. One of my colleagues might be able to send me it where it actually talks. Well, let me see if I can actually bring it up. It is important what you've just said, so I'll see if I can find it where I'm on the screen at the moment. Let me have a look and see if I can find our person.
While you're doing that, there's another comment here. Truth Crusader, the reason the people don't understand their inalienable rights is due to the British state removing it from the education curriculum in the late 60s, contravening the Union with Scotland Act 1707. I said that earlier when we were talking about CPR and lawyers and everything, you know, from about the early 70s. None of this was taught in school. You know, I went to school in the 80s and the 90s. I certainly wasn't taught it.
Well, I don't know if I can share this on the screen. Do you want me to share this on the screen?
Have you got the present and invite buttons down the bottom?
Yeah, I have.
If you hit present, you should have an option there to share your screen.
Image share screen. Let's hopefully, it says, sharing screens is easiest with 2 monitors. Sharing works with best than other computers. Share screen. I'm hoping I can show you which one it is. Entire screen. I'll bring this up on your screen. Hopefully you can see that. I'm not sure if you can at the moment.
There we go.
So on the screen, the bit that's highlighted, just to make sure everyone knows where this come from, this is the Helsby's Laws of England, 4th edition, volume 8, constitutional law and conflict of laws. Again, just to make sure everyone's aware. So it's not me. I'm giving you the receipts, right? Introduction, what is meant by the conflict of laws, but then I'm going to go to the highlighted area. In the conflict of laws, foreign element and foreign country mean a non-English element and a country other than England. From the point of view of conflicts of laws, Scotland or Northern Ireland is for the most purpose is as much a foreign country as France or Germany. So just to make sure everyone's aware, that states that in the Helsby's Laws of England. That is the authority on this, right? So making sure that everyone understands it. And now I'm going to show you one other. Hopefully you can see this on the screen. If not, I'm just going to make sure people understand. This is paragraph 1310 from the Helsby's Laws of England. And I want you to listen carefully to what it says. This is about the civil servants and positions that can affect the security of the state. In addition, civil servants may be subjected to a purge. Now, in this document, it actually, I'm not sure if I can bring this up a bit further so people can see it a bit clearer. It actually says purge in inverted commas, and then it says procedure and a positive vetting procedure. The purge procedure is designed to prevent persons with a communist or fascist associations being employed on work, the nature of which is vital to the security of the state. Right? So I'm hoping everyone understands, and I'm going to stop the share there, what that actually means. It means that Keir Starmer, Tony Blair, Sadiq Khan, who are committed Marxists as members of the Fabian Society, are not allowed to have the positions they hold, right? And what you're actually seeing, there was 141 Fabian Society members elected to Parliament in the last general election. Now, when you look at the cheating that they're doing, you wonder why we're in such a bad state with people flooding into the country and then funding the hotels and doing what they're doing. They're not allowed. They should be purged from our system. The system is corrupt to the core. And that's what we're fighting against.
And I think that's where we need to start again. You know, never mind all this British, the Union and everything else. Start with England and work from there.
The political, so people must realise, anyone listening to this, and many of your audience understand this, that British as a nationality was only introduced as a nationality I'm talking about, in 1947 and 1981, when it erased English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, and England particular is under attack. But the main point I'm trying to make is that British nationality was never intended by the Acts of Union.
No.
It's been imposed upon us by the infiltration of Marxists who were trying to destroy England and the common law jurisdiction. It's really important people understand that. And by doing so, they need to destroy the identities of England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Cornwall, by the way. And in doing so, they implant their nationality of British, which is a legal fiction. Why is it a legal fiction? It was created by statute. And because it was created by the law, no different to the monarchy, no different to a corporation, creating that means they stole and stripped you of your rights as an Englishman. They're not allowed to do that. And what we're doing is showing people you need to understand what they're doing. They're not incompetent. They're very clever.
Yeah, playing the long game, aren't they? I mean, you see it working out in the news and the media, and hell, Prime Minister's question time every single day. Very much the long game. One thing I want to cover, just going backwards a couple of steps, we talk about the alternate vote, and we mentioned proportional representation. What do you think of proportional representation? What would you see as a ideal world with regard to voting? A fair system of voting.
That's not a 5 minute answer, I've got to tell you. But the first past the post has been manipulated by the party system. Wherever in the world the type of election system that you're talking about, not alternative vote, it's used in New Zealand. If you look at New Zealand is crippled, but in effect by communism and communism. It makes it very much simpler for them to manipulate. My personal view at the moment is we've used this system of elections for hundreds of years. It is the corruptions that have been allowed to continue without any enforcement of the laws against corruption. So just to give you an indication, the first statute of Westminster is explicit in what it says about freedom of elections, and there should be severe penalties for those who corrupt elections. The thing is, it's not being enforced. So in reality, I don't believe there needs to be a change to the election system. It needs to be, I think there needs to be a couple of changes to our constitution. One is that the oath that people take must be to your country, which is England, and the constitution, which is the rule of law, the common law in our case. And then judges would be forced to enforce it because that's their oath. And again, I'm not the only person to say that. Sir William Wade said that in his lecture, the Hamlin lectures, in particular, constitutional fundamentals. If you look at that lecture, he says that in there. He also explains that Scotland is overrepresented in the Union Parliament, which it is. But all of that has been ignored. The only real way you can reset everything is to go back to being England, which is to void, not repeal, the Acts of Union, go back to the common law system. Within 18 months, we will be back on the straight and narrow. But people need to understand that communism and Marxism, and in some places fascism, has, again, communism and fascism are both alien to the English constitution. They're authoritative in nature, which means we as the English or constitutionalists don't tolerate that. You can't tell us what to do. You can't force and stamp the state all over us or our families or our inheritance, right? So that's what really people need to understand, that enforcement of our constitution is really needed. And to, how can I put this? Someone in Canada used this reference, and he was absolutely bang on when he was talking to me. He said, what you're actually saying is we need to make people constitutionally literate. And I said, that's exactly right. What used to be known about the English, there used to be a term, and it was brought up in Hansard, that every Englishman is a common lawyer. And that's the way we should operate. Everyone should know what their rights are. That's where the Americans get this document, right, which I got when I was out in Texas. And that's the pamphlet that tells you what the Constitution is. So everyone knows what it is. Well, the Acts of Union actually states in there, one of the articles states that these rights should be communicated to the people. That's where America got that from right. Our Acts of Union.
I think, I mean, that's a valid point, isn't it? A lot of people become disconnected from politics, disconnected from the system. And when it comes to elections, it's like, I'll say it, bollocks to it. What's the point? You know, it's not going to get me anywhere. I'm going to stay at home. And then they become complicit in the system they're talking about. And you're not getting enough people coming out. And those that come out get trapped in the British system of, oh, I can only vote for them or them because anything else is a wasted vote. People need to get out. People need to vote. People need to be aware of their rights.
Yeah. No, so I couldn't agree more. And just to emphasise the point you've just made, which is a very valid point, to encourage people not to vote is a common law offence of interference with an election. That's the common law principle. It is unlawful to tell people not to vote because you're interfering with an election, because it is a common law right of freedom of election. And then for you to say don't vote, it becomes an interference with an election.
I think that's what's at stake here, isn't it? The freedom to vote, fairness of elections. Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well, which you've come across before, which you've mentioned before, is Ashby versus White. If people say, oh, what's the point? Get your bum down the polling booth and write, I do not consent, Ashby versus White. It's got to be counted.
It's got to be recorded. It has to be recorded.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I want to turn my attention to the mainstream media just for a second, because in my opinion, all the media is a mouthpiece of the government of the time, you know, controlling the narrative, what we're supposed to see. Now, as I said, the only place I've seen this is the Liverpool Echo, and that's not looking very hard. There might be other places, but this article isn't strictly 100% accurate as to the facts of what's really going on. Have you had, I mean, I've got somebody retweeted the link to this live and tagged GB News in it. I thought, well, they'll either see it or they won't. But have you had any approaches? Have you tried to get this in with anybody? Or
yeah, no, we have tried. I mean, again, the only people who have responded to us, not directly in writing, but coming along to the hearing, was the American Embassy. Everyone else, the media, etc., all of the media, we've tried BBC News, we've tried ITV News, GB News, and it's no shock to me, especially with GB News. It's disgusting what they're doing. It's even more disgusting the amount of alternative media that are just following. They're not alternative media. They're reparroting the mainstream media points. That's not the objective. The objective is for us to have discussions about the issues that are affecting us. Whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. You know, the relevance is getting the information out to the people. I'll give you an example. There was a particular case in 2003, and it was to do with an election broadcast. And the BBC, and this is why it's relevant today, because that judgment, they actually stopped an election broadcast. It went to court, and freedom of elections and freedom of information come out, similar to our leaflets. And bearing in mind what the leaflet says, that judges can be put in prison for torture, right? In 2003, that particular judgment was about abortions. And that judgment was about a group of people that had created a political party with a single issue. And the single issue, it was something to do with, it was like Babies Alliance or Pro-Life Alliance, right? And they was a political party, and they had paid and created for a 5-minute documentary that showed graphically what happens to a baby during abortion. And the judges said there's nothing wrong with that election broadcast. They're not dramatizing it. They're showing you exactly what happens, right? But they still went in favor of the BBC and said you need to make changes, right? So they made changes to this broadcast in which all the graphic elements of what was happening to the baby during this murder, right? And because of that, the party never got anywhere, right? And again, look at the vote last week in Parliament. If people was made aware in 2003, graphically, of the honesty and the truth of that election broadcast, the people would have started to rise up against abortion and murder of babies' innocence in the womb, right? And instead, you're now seeing something which is, in a legal term, unintended consequence of a judgment in 2003. Yeah. Right? Well, they in effect, by doing that, interfered with election communication of a political party, even though it was a single issue party, crucially important. What was that single issue? The life of the unborn.
Yeah.
And that case is, I mean, there's some fantastic paragraphs from the judges where they expressed their absolute dismay at what the BBC was asking them to do. So again, all I'm trying to say to people is you have to remember that when you start to suppress the freedom of speech, like you've just said, and it come from this conversation, how many of these broadcasters are actually talking about the case? None. What does that mean? They don't want the people to know that there are corrupt elections, and they are corrupt to the core. One election judge has already said it. The UK election system is so corrupt, and I'm paraphrasing, it would make a banana republic blush.
It's embarrassing, isn't it? In effect, because there's so many countries in the world, America being one that comes to my mind, that base their entire system on the mother of all parliaments, here. And it really is a shocker that we've been reduced to this.
I totally agree. It is 100% shocking. I'm shocked. I mean, we're not doing it at one end; we're doing it at both ends. Where, I mean, the ultimate crime is to harm an innocent, and especially an innocent that has had no life yet. In terms of what they're doing, but now they're going to the other end, and they've created a law of euthanasia. And again, it is the state that is controlling that. The coercion, and again, Sarah Putin voted for it. It just beggars belief that they say they've read these laws. I don't believe they have, and they can easily be amended once they've been put into operation, and that's what makes them so dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just no safeguards at all. You go through life and you lose people. And you see everything surrounding that. I did a video on this a couple of days ago, in fact. But then there are other people which are deserving of living, and this could endanger that. It's just so many holes it's shot full of. It really is. I want to wrap this up with just some comments, Graeme, just to see what people have got to say, because there's a few bits and pieces here.
Yeah.
Scott 2, thank you for the £10 super chat. Anyone from anywhere or with any ancestry can become British. You can't be English, Welsh, Scottish or Irish because you've lived on the island for a certain amount of time or are an anchor baby. Yeah. Was it Farage come out of a comment not too long ago? What makes you Welsh if you've lived in Wales for a couple of years or something? Some bloody throwaway comment. That's the whole problem with the British thing, isn't it? Yeah,
I agree entirely. There were constitutional limitations on nationality, particularly English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and Cornish, by the Acts of Settlement 1701. What that actually did was, and again, it was brought into effect because the Dutch king was taking liberties by putting Dutchmen in places and started to destroy the English culture and rights, and two was robbing the money from England and putting it into Holland. So again, they're the same race as us. It's nothing to do with race, but what they put in place was that you couldn't hold any position of authority as such, MP, military, judge, lord, etc., unless you was born of English parents. It didn't say anything about race, right? So it was a protection, protect England and our culture. Again, that was repealed by the British, and they created a free-for-all to attack England, basically.
Absolutely.
So to emphasise this again, because I want to make sure everyone gets this, and it is important, the English Constitution bans, for example, Sharia. It bans Jewish law. It protects the Protestant religion outright. But one thing it does not do is discriminate against someone. So if you've got someone, and I'm just saying black because it's the easiest thing to refer to, if you've got a black person and their family, a family of black people, have lived here for 4 generations, for example, and whether they married into other races is not really relevant. But if they, let's just say their entirety, they haven't, there's no interracial relationship, not that it would matter if there was, but if they've been here for 4 generations, they are English, right? But, so we're not ethno-nationalists, but the original person who come here, right, couldn't have been elected into Parliament, couldn't have been a police constable, couldn't have been a judge. Their children couldn't have been in any of them positions, but their children's children could, because by that time they would have understood completely English law and the culture of England. Therefore, they would not have been in any way active, or shouldn't be active, against the English Constitution or our culture. But it was brought in place because of the Dutch, and they're the same race as us. So it's not a racial, there's not a racial element to it. That's the point when I say to people, the English Constitution says nothing about race. It does about religion for obvious reasons, but it doesn't about race.
And that's another example of something you can see that just isn't being obeyed or stuck to, or
exactly. So Sadiq Khan, for example, couldn't be the mayor.
No.
David Lammy, for example, couldn't be in any position that he's in now if you stuck to the original English Constitution. It is the British and the communists, Marxists within that regime that are destroying us. And by the way, the fascists would do the same thing. It's alien to us.
Paul Christopher, free Lucy Connelly now. I can't argue with that statement at all.
No, I agree.
She's been in there far too long for nothing more than putting a tweet online which she regretted after a dog walk and come home and got rid of it.
Do you just want me to add something about Lucy Connelly? And I think people should fully understand this. One of our members contacted me. He'd been beaten up by migrants, various issues, and he was arrested. And I said to him, when you've been arrested, what did you say to the police? He said, I followed your direct instructions and said no comment. I didn't even give him my name. They took him to hospital. His face was smashed to bits. They took photos of him. They took him to the police station. They interviewed him. He said no comment to everything. He phoned me and contacted me and said, Graeme, they've charged me with so-and-so. I said, send me the documentation. He sent it to me. He's a member. He sent it to me, and I said, they haven't charged you with anything. He said, no, they said they had. I said, they might have said it, but they haven't charged you with anything. And the reason they haven't charged you with anything is because you commented every single thing. I said, did I ask you for a drink, if you wanted a drink of water? He said, yeah. I said, what did you say? He said, no comment. I said, exactly. That's it. And now what's happened, that he's got to go back to the police station sometime in August, I believe, He said, what do I do? I said, same thing, no comment. No comment, everything, right? Because as soon as you open your mouth, you are convicting yourself. If you've no commented everything, then you ask for a jury, right? In his case, he can. And then you explain to the jury what happened and you're got or not guilty. The problem with Lucy Connelly, she didn't listen to an English constitutionalist and the paralegal that understands the law. What she did, she took notice of her British solicitors and her British barristers and she pleaded guilty.
And now
she should have trusted a jury.
Well, there was another example, wasn't there? Was it a former Marine who took it to a jury, and I think they took 15 minutes to find him not guilty?
Well, again, the power of it's literally the fourth estate, I call it, which is the jury. And they can corrupt juries, and they do corrupt juries. But if you know what you're doing, this particular person, I've already written him out, a case stated, we're all ready to go, and the legal argument that will be put to the Crown in a Crown Court jury, they cannot go against it. And I've said, whatever happens, it may be stressful, but once that happens and you get you're not guilty, then you sue the police and then you sue the CPS, right? And he said, no, I'm up for it. We're going to do it. So again, and there was someone else in a similar situation who spoke to the police. He's now on trial. They've used some of the things he said in his interview. And I've said, listen, if you open your mouth, you're cutting your own throat.
Absolutely. Bob D, two-party system is key to this systemic failure. Well, they've kind of melded into one over the last 30-odd years, haven't they? And this is where we have no choice in that system that's completely and utterly screwed us all over. Jupiter, it wasn't the acts of union or British nationality that's damaged us. It's the shitbag politicians we've had since November 1990.
It went on well before that. I can go back through the laws showing that it is the union that's done us the most damage. It is the British Nationality Act that's removed all your rights. And the way that they're doing it is obvious to anyone who's read law for a long time exactly what they've done. But that's why are people
so ashamed to class themselves as English? I'm proud to be English.
Good, so you should be.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is, you're born to parents who have been brought up a certain way because of their parents and their forebears before them, and they've all been brought up to think British, think the state, think the party, and it's just a generational thing all the way down the line. We're slightly different, I think, because of our breeding, the way we're brought up and everything else, but it's all rooted in that same British institution, which is no bloody good, and people need to start waking up and be proud of who you are, English, Scottish, Welsh, whatever it happens to be. Sense of national pride definitely needs to come back. Observer, no matter how loud the noise or heavy the day, unity, hope and truth will always rise. Let's bring light where it's needed most together. I can't argue with that. People give up hope too easily, don't they? And so sometimes these things just take a long time. Jupiter, but elected politicians are not civil servants. What does Lord Helsby say about elected traitors?
Well, elected traitors should receive the sentence for traitors. Let me put it that way. I don't want to be too explicit because we're on YouTube.
Yes, I know what that penalty is myself. Guna Mum, they stopped teaching the Constitution in the late 60s as Britain had already decided to unlawfully join the common market / EU. It was treason, as no country prince or potence can ever tell England what to do. Absolutely. Correct. That's an example of the long game as well, isn't it? Because everyone at the time thought they were just joining a common market, free trade with Europe or the European continent. And then 40 years later, we get everything else thrown on us over a period of time. That's a prime example.
It is a prime example, and if you read the 5 presidents' report of the early 1970s, the Europeans always told us exactly what it was about. It was the politicians that lied to you.
Absolutely. The Dodgy Git Show. That's a new one. Define England. Where's the contract? It's on that shelf behind you, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Johnny English, could you impose a commercial lien on the CEO of the post office and the post?
Could you impose a commercial lien on the CEO of the post office and the post? The answer to that question, without getting into commercial liens and is that they have committed a tort against us. Right, which and it is the tort that they will be sued for. They have also committed a human rights abuse in specific against free elections. There's a number of elements of that I could go forwards with, and it's one of the reasons they're so terrified of me keeping Emma Gilthorpe in this case.
Observer, plenty of money in Labour's pockets. When will they listen to us, the English? If we have to raise our voices to the roof, we will be heard. We will be heard. I mean, just got to keep going. That's all we can do. Just keep going.
The Labour Party are controlled by the Fabian Society, who are Marxists. They are completely against workers. They always have been. If you understand where the Fabian Society come from and who originally funded them, which was the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, you will understand that the pharmaceuticals, the oil industries, every industry, the military-industrial complex, all of it had a hand in creating the Labour Party to control the Labour force in the way that they wanted to coerce them. And that's the bit that people are not understanding about the Labour Party. They've never, ever been in your favour.
And everything you've just said, it's not very hard to find out either. It's all out there in the public domain if you know where to look for it.
Exactly.
June, just a quick reminder, 25th of July, Royal Courts of Justice, King's Bench Division, be there. Show them the people have interest in this.
Correct.
Absolutely. Then that promotes the idea of public interest, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
Adam Henderson, I suspect she's been taken for a ride and has now been ditched by the Royal Fail. That's our friend, the former CEO, that's just been ditched. Maria Ingram, executives could not act against the Constitution and then run away saying, I've resigned. This is not credible or lawful.
Correct.
I think as well, you take a captain of a ship, for example, and one of your officers or one of your men or women do something while they're under your command. You're ultimately responsible. Surely that's the same for...
Andy, what you've just said, you must be reading the ancient laws and precedents, unless it's just common sense. But there is actually a full transcript of a case where the judge said exactly what you just said. Well, and he said it was a yacht race. He described the yacht race.
At the end of the day, I put it down to my own business. If one of my staff screws up, that's on me because I sent them. I'm responsible ultimately. Royal Mail, government, anything. Anyone screws up under you're culpable. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, exactly that.
David James, everything Mr. Moore has said is correct. The younger generation has not been educated in this. No, they haven't. I mean, I listen to some of the stuff my youngsters come home and tell me that they learn at school. I'm like, what? It's been going on for years. David Johnson, postal votes are being corrupted by certain family heads and religious leaders. Postal votes should be banned. They're certainly not being used for the purpose for which they were originally, entailed, were they? Somebody who's a Raspberry Ripple that can't get down the polling booth and wants to vote, it's gone beyond that.
No, I agree. And there is actually an election case which involved Tower Hamlets in the East End of London, where the judge voided the election and said he'd never seen anything so corrupt in all his life. And it was exactly that. They was actually taking postal votes and just filling them in.
Right. I mean, this is the thing with what you're going through at the moment. One of the things that we fully expect to see, if it goes all the way, is Sarah Poachin's vote count to be a hell of a lot more than it was. And that would certainly be a big reveal if that happened.
I would expect we got somewhere in between 700 upwards votes, and I believe that Sarah Poachin won by thousands of votes, not 6 votes.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. Paul Christopher, in 1968, Enoch was dismissed as a crackpot on the issue of immigration. Politicians don't want to listen to the truth. All I will say is anybody that comes here by the way they are, and I bash on about this, I want to know who you are, where you've come from, and what you want to do when you get here. And if I don't get answers to any of those questions, you're leaving. And very, very much with what's happened over the last 48, 72 hours, that's even more crucial than ever. The public opinion of Labour, a fiery mix of boredom, unrest, and here we go again. That's one way of putting it. Fraser Ford, no net zero is being pushed by deep pockets, and it's tied to why the farmers' tax is being forced to make the farmers poor, so they have to accept the chemical cow food to support climate. I mean, it's like the weather we've had over the last couple of days as well. It's been glorious. You read the paper, we're all in trouble. We're all doomed, and the sun's going to explode. It's ridiculous. Fraser Ford, but the elections are rigged by illegals. Not quite sure what you mean by that. Observer, we have rights, yeah, until the government treats them like optional guidelines nobody's actually supposed to follow. I think this is the thing where they're trying to hide what your rights actually are from you in the grand scheme of things, really.
Absolutely correct.
Well and truly. Well, that's the last of the comments. Now, just to finish off, Graeme, what's next for you? What's happening with all this? You've obviously got July. What's going to happen after that point?
Well, after July, we'll know. My opinion that the arguments I'm putting forward are so strong, there will be a full, what they class as a trial. It's a hearing in Runcorn, and then all the evidence will be submitted, and the judges will be cross-examining. I'll be cross-examining witnesses. Postmen and women will have to come and give evidence, and so will the managers in the post office and possibly Emma Gilthorpe. So all of that is what we should be looking at, and making sure we hold people to account, including the police who harassed our campaign, the returning officer with what they did. Don't forget, I actually saw with my own eyes what I describe as 116 votes, and they say there's 50. They're bundled in 50s. I see 2 bundles of 50 and some extras, right? So whatever happens, the return is wrong. And that means that people out there should understand that whoever they vote for, it should be recorded against that candidate, not an alternative vote system, which the Labour authorities all over the country. There is no such thing as a red wall. What there is red cheating, and that's what people need to understand. That's what you're trying to break through, is they're cheating, and it's easily resolved. So the 25th is really important. Up until that time, I've got a lot of work to do. Don't forget, it is, although I have a team behind me, don't get me wrong, I know I'm part of a team. It's me who's got to put all this together as much as I possibly can, and especially the legal arguments, because I have to be comfortable in presenting them and understand that, and then orally explain it to two High Court judges. So everyone, if anyone wants to see me in action, if you want to call it that, as a common lawyer in literally a court of common pleas, which is really what we're involved with a court. This is a real common law court, so all of the real common law will come out during that hearing. Again, I'm really grateful to all the supporters who turned up last time, exceptionally well behaved, and the judge took note of how many people was in that audience. So it doesn't matter what the mainstream media and alternative media, by not covering it, is doing, obviously. But what's crucial to this is that the judge sees that there is public interest. So again, you can see all that, and I mean, we've got the full English show on Rumble, and then follow me on X, which is English Exit, which basically means return us to self-determination. That's all it means, and it's a #1 human right. I'm not asking for any nastiness towards Scotland. I love Scotland. I love the Welsh. I love the Irish, and I love the Cornish. But I do believe that every single person on this planet has the right to decide what their culture is going to be, what their nation looks like, what their laws are. And you can only achieve that really with self-determination, which is the antithesis to globalization.
Totally. I'm behind it. And hopefully everybody that watches this evening is also. It's very important. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate you coming along. When Graeme has got more substantial news, we'll take this up again and have another chat online, if that's all right with you, Graeme.
No problem at all. And don't forget, you'll be most welcome if you want to bring a number. There's a lot of Kent supporters of what we do. If they contact you and you all want to come up and you want a live interview after the hearing, or even during the hearing, it's going to be a whole day event on the 25th of July. I'll obviously give you an exclusive to that. Yeah,
I'll try and get myself up there, definitely. Yeah, if anybody watching tonight, if you can share this, it's very important. This information needs to get around. It's, our futures, our country's future, self-determination, fairness in elections, our whole way of life, how we live, how we're governed, who decides what we do, where we do, and how we do it. This is a lot bigger than some guy that only got 50 votes in a by-election sometime. It's far bigger than all of that. So it's important this is shared. Please hit the like button, the thumbs up, because that helps push it round everywhere as well. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, I will look forward to talking to you again very soon.